The goal for me was probably to try and become a professional rugby player. Did my APC to get my MRICS letters, and I stayed at CBRE for about 6 years.
Because it's quite a big leap of faith that you've done, which is moving out of the suburbs of London from a fairly stable job at a company which had been around for decades to a new company, freshly started in a new area. What were sort of the initial thoughts behind considering taking that leap?
And we'd love to build Flower Property as a whole, and of course the letting side, into a reputable local Bath firm.
Hi there, welcome to the next episode of the Flower Property podcast. Today I'm joined by my brother Luke. He's now running the letting side of the business, and in this episode we'll learn more about Luke, his journey in the property industry, and also his experience at Flower Property. So Luke, start off with telling us a little bit more about yourself.
Great, thanks Jack. Where to start? So I think, I've recently joined Flower Property. Me and my family have moved down here about 2 months ago. So my wife Rachel and our 2 young boys, Rupert and Hugo. So we've just moved to Bradford-on-Avon, and we've come down from the outskirts of London and Hampton Court. We're all settling in pretty well. Boys are into a nice nursery, and Rachel's continuing to work remotely and part remotely up in London. And obviously I've joined Flower Property, and all's going well so far. And looking forward to, helping yourself and us grow the flower business to see where it can come.
Yeah,
where it can get to.
It's exciting. How are you finding life in Bradford-on-Avon and Bath versus London? What's the comparison like between the two?
It's good. I mean, it's good because Bath and Wiltshire and Somerset, I suppose, is familiar to me because I grew up in Devizes. So I'm a Wiltshire boy, really. So it's been sort of easy to transition myself and the family down to here, as opposed to having to go to somewhere completely brand new. But the comparisons, I mean, London, of course, is a lot faster paced, a lot busier. Even just kind of the feel of the traffic and the environment is a bit more stressful. Though down here it's a bit more relaxing, and something that, I'm really enjoying, and I think is slightly sort of better suited to me, having done the sort of London hectic sort of lifestyle for a number of years. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, well, I made the same move as you a couple of years ago, and definitely wouldn't look back and ever considering going back in the other directions. Definitely not on the cards. I think a lot of people who move out this way, when they move out, they love it here and they never leave again. So you do see that all the time.
Absolutely.
So going back to your childhood, you mentioned school in Devizes and then also Somerset. Tell us more about that part of your life.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Devizes with my 2 older brothers, Andrew and David, and my mum. And so I went to the state school in Devizes up until 16, which was a great experience. Made lots of friends and have kept those friendships ongoing. But then at 16, I sort of had the opportunity to go to a private school down in Somerset. So I went to Millfield, which is sort of renowned really for its sporting credentials. And I suppose really, when I was growing up and going to Millfield, the goal for me was probably to try and become a professional rugby player. And so I went to Millfield for 16 to 18 for sixth form, and again was a really terrific experience. Very different to going to Devizes School, a small sort of town, and then going to a big sort of well-known private school such as Millfield, which is a big school with obviously lots of very well-known sporting stars that have graced the fields and other sporting achievements. So really enjoyed my time there. Managed to play some good rugby with some Bath sporting royalty, which I was very fortunate to do so. I learned a lot from going to Millfield, and it set me up for other experiences. Going to university, it was an easier transition because I suppose the transition from Devizes School to Millfield was quite was quite a difficult one, but I look back on it all with fond memories.
Nice. And then talking about rugby, obviously played it to a very high standard and was gunning towards trying to become a professional. How close did you get? Where did you get to? And what happened with that side of your career?
Yeah, where did I get to? I mean, yeah, I played some national rugby up in Berkshire, which was good. I mean, playing with Millfield was almost felt like playing for a professional rugby team, to be honest. And the players that I got to play with have excelled and played for the Lions and Bath and England. But I suppose it didn't quite happen for me. I could have done things differently, I suppose, to have maybe got a bit further. But it didn't quite happen for me. And I continued playing rugby for a long time up until about 2 years ago. I played up in Cobham for about 10 years, and that was a good fun and a great social life around it. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. Making friendships on and off the field. But yeah, would have been nice to have been able to grace the fields at the Rec, but unfortunately it didn't happen for me.
Well, it's the way it goes sometimes, doesn't it? And so then you had that stint at Millfield, and then what happened after that? Went on to university, and then starting off into your professional career. What was that part of your journey in life like?
Yeah, sure. So I after going to Millfield, I went to Reading University and I did an undergraduate there, and I did a business degree. So I did that for 3 years and got a good degree out of it. Had a good experience at university and continued to play rugby there for the university side, which again was great fun. Great experience, really loved university. And so then after university, I was finding my feet for a while, to be honest. I was trying to work out what industry I wanted to get into. So I did sort of some various roles afterwards. I kind of went straight into a sports marketing role where I had a pretty cool job, seeing as I like rugby. I got to take the Six Nations trophy all around the UK, driving it, quite literally driving it to events, to the games, all across Ireland, Scotland and England and Wales. So I did that for 6 to 9 months as a placement and enjoyed that, but that came to an end because it was just a sort of a permanent, fixed term contract. And so then after that, I was trying to work out what to do after that. And so I thought, well, I'll go to Australia for a year. So me and my best friend, we packed bags and went to Australia for a year, and I worked in mobile advertising. You see those little irritating ads that come up when you're on an app or something? Yeah, I was probably responsible for that at some point. Yeah, so I did that for a year. Australia's a great lifestyle. Beaches, good weather, barbecues. So enjoyed that for a year. And then came back and again was sort of trying to find my feet and worked in management consulting for 9 months, but wasn't quite right for me. It was quite heavily focused on IT and it didn't really sit well for me, or I just didn't really enjoy it particularly. And then I was doing some soul searching, some thinking of what would be, what would suit me. And I, of course, had to look around our family and think, well, everyone seems to be in property. Maybe I should consider that as a career, with brothers and stepsisters and parents, surveyors. So I did an internship at a couple of big firms. So I did an internship in commercial property at CBRE and BNP Paribas Real Estate over the summer, and so enjoyed that for 6 to 8 weeks and thought, yeah, this seems a lot more suited. It's a very social industry, people focused relationship building industry, which appealed to me. And so then I wanted to pursue that, and I actually needed to go back to university to study a master's in real estate. And so I funnily enough went back to Reading University and did a master's in real estate there, because Reading is got a good reputation for real estate, and I think a majority of people, or a lot of the surveyors, have been to to Reading University. So I did that for a year. Again, had a good time, and got a master's degree out of it. And on the back of that, I went into a graduate training scheme at CBRE, and down the commercial property pathway. And so I trained there and did my APC to get my MRICS letters. And I stayed at CBRE for about 6 years, predominantly in an agency role, that being offices mainly in the West End and the South East, which again was a great experience. Great experience to be at a big firm. You don't really get any bigger in the commercial world as CBRE. And yeah, enjoyed my time, but the big corporate world I don't think was quite suited for me. And so I decided to go the polar end and go to a really, really small firm after that. And I went to a small local practice in Surrey called Robinson's, and I worked there for 5 years, or just shy of 5 years. So just a couple of months ago, really, I left Robinson and went, from, as I said, it was again, chalk and cheese, and compared to CBRE and a small firm like Robinson's, but equally enjoyed my time there. Some great people, and learnt a lot, because that was more general practice in commercial property, compared to where CBRE is quite specialised in doing office agency, so lettings basically for CBRE. But with Robinson's, very much more general practice, management of commercial and some residential, selling of real estate and lease consultancy. So look, I think I certainly learned a lot at Robinson's, and I think it set me up well. And I think my whole sort of property career, if you want to call that, over the past 10 years has given me some good skills to take forward for Flower Property. So that, in a nutshell, in 5 minutes or however long it's been, is a snapshot of where I've sort of come from and where I am today.
Great. And then talking about commercial property, which is where you started off doing internship with CBRE, and then after you graduated did a full-on training role with them. Was that when you started looking at property, the area which you specifically wanted to go into? Was that just where there was an opportunity which you took? What was that sort of decision making for starting off in commercial?
Yeah, so I think when you take your APC, you have to choose a pathway, and you can choose sort of a building pathway or a residential pathway or a commercial pathway. And I think because I've done, and CBRE are more specialised in commercial, they're more known, I'd say, for commercial. They do have strong residential. And so obviously I'd done those internships both in a commercial role and an agency specific role for both my internships. And that felt like more of a pathway that I wanted to pursue as opposed to residential. I think I enjoy still enjoy the kind of the industry aspect of it. Obviously residential is for everyone. It's yourself, whoever needs housing purposes, but I enjoy commercial property because you get to understand businesses and industry and what their requirements are and how real estate can fulfill their requirements in that sense. And so commercial property was the one I wanted to pursue, and ended up, and then obviously doing the training at CBRE, which is a great place to pass through APC because it's a difficult process. And then ended up in an agency role. I say ended up, I pursued an agency role, which is, it's fast paced. It's at times high pressurized, I guess. You're dealing with, some big numbers in terms of rents and things, certainly in central London, and, a high social life as well around it, a lot of socialising with industry peers, clients. So that is also a big part of it. And some people like that, some people don't, because it does involve kind of out of hours activities and socializing. So I really enjoyed that. And I didn't quite have the same at Robinson, so that was certainly an element that I missed when I moved to Robinsons, was not having that aspect of it.
Yeah. I think, whatever size the practice is, be it CBRE, which is a big multinational, or Flower Property, a company of two, that in our industry, what we do, be it residential, commercial, or building, whatever you're doing, it is a relationship industry, and you have to network. And if you want to be in this sector, I think you have to be open to working outside of those regular hours,
absolutely.
be that showing people properties on weekends, or networking with people in the evenings after work to try and win business. It is a crucial part of it. So it's good that you enjoy that, because it's pretty fundamental to growing any business of any scale in property. Just so that people, because they might not know what this means, you talk about APC and MRICS and these letters. Tell us more about what those actually are.
Yeah, good question. I don't even think I know what APC stands for now.
I don't know.
Assessment of Professional Competence?
I think that
sounds about right, doesn't it? But I don't, it could be wrong. Well, I'm a chartered surveyor, so I trained for my APC, and so I qualified, and then that means I am now part of the RICS. So I have the letters MRICS, which says I am a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. So that is the governing body of property in the UK, or for surveyors certainly. So you have to do that. You train for a certain amount of years or months in order to be able to take an assessment, and that is quite a challenging process. I think at the time, it might be different now, that first time pass rate, I think, is about 60% across the whole country. So you can see it's quite a difficult process to pass. But yes, that is a chartered surveyor. If you want to become chartered, that is a qualification you may want to consider taking. So then you become a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors.
Nice. Okay, it's good that people can hear.
I think
it's a tough qualification to get, so it's good to talk about that. It's something that you've earned, because it takes years to get to that point. As you said, studying at your masters is kind of a prerequisite before then working and doing your APC and getting the qualification. So it is something worth talking about. I'd like to go back to sort of comparing the bigger corporate versus the small independent one office practice, which you've had experience of both. But before we go to that, I wanted to talk about of your experience before moving to Flower Property. As you said, you did lettings agency, property management across Robinsons and CBRE, general practice, lease renewals, the whole works. What did you enjoy the most, and what do you enjoy the least of those various things you've done, the whole arc that you've had in that sort of 10, 11 years in those other companies?
Yeah, I think with anything, in any job, there's good bits and there's bad bits, I suppose. With any job, you'll find there's never going to be 100% perfect job where you enjoy every single aspect of it. And I suppose that I think there's we can look at what I enjoyed about a big company and a small company, and the different roles within it. I suppose to start on the sizes of the companies and the differences. At CBRE, it's of course it's a multinational, and the good things about that is, certain things like you're supported very well. Obviously, I was supported very well through my training to become chartered. You're supported with lots of other things in terms of healthcare and benefits packages and goals and clear progression pathway progression. And what is good about being in a large company like CBRE is you've got everything on your end of your phone, because they do everything and they cover every service and they cover every aspect and every geography in the world pretty much. And so if you've got a question or you need some assistance from another part of the company, you can just pick up the phone and call someone in the capital markets department or the rating department, who can input and give you the advice and the information you need, which you can then, portray to your client and give them, high level of service. And it builds that network as well. You're working for a big company, so naturally you're exposed to a lot of people at different events and everyday life in the lift and at the coffee machine. And so you build that network, and I think it's really important to always look after your networks, because you never know when you're going to need them in the future. So I think you should never burn your bridges when you leave companies for whatever reason you've left. I think it's important to nurture those. So those are the positives of a big company. But then the negatives of a bigger company is that it's competitive. There's a lot of people that you probably won't see eye to eye with, and you've got to manage that as a whole process and environment. So then those are positives and negatives of a big company. And it suits some, it suits doesn't really. And then turning to a smaller company, you can almost flip it on its head. So I was just describing how you've got access to various services and benefits and networks. Well, on a smaller company, you don't necessarily have that, and you've got to sort of find your way a little bit more independently. If you need some information, it's not just, I can't just grab a research report from the research team, because you don't have a research team. So you've got to go out and hunt the information that you need in order to provide the service or for your clients. But at the same time, on a smaller company, you have more responsibility, you have more accountability at the same time. You had more opportunity to drive business to where you thought it needed to go, more input on business decisions. And you got to work with smaller companies and smaller local companies and really get to understand what makes them tick and what they need, and build relationships. Whereas when you're working for a big company and you're working with big clients, you're never really dealing with the client. If it's Apple or Russell and Bromley or whoever it may be, you'll be dealing with an advisor who represents the client, who will probably be someone like yourself. You might even have gone to university with them, because they're working on the client side and you're working on the service side. So pros and cons of big companies, small companies.
Yeah, pros and cons. Yeah, no, I agree completely. But I think there's ways of sorting that out, as I've learnt since moving to Flower Property. In previous roles for me, worked at places like Savills, where you had exactly that same network, and you could just call up someone else in the company and they'd be able to answer that question, or you could refer business across to them. Pretty much everything could be done in-house. But what I've discovered, and I think from Robinsons and now working at Flower Property, is you can build that same network just outside of the company, working with other small businesses, other professional structural engineers, surveyors, engineers, whatever it may be, architects, search agents. You can build that same network. You just have to go outside your company bubble. That's the difference. But I think there's something nice about that, because you're then propping up and supporting other businesses in their growth.
Certainly,
and they'll reciprocate and help with your growth too. And the thing you mentioned, which I think I experience as the biggest difference between the two, is the impact that you have when you're working at a small business. The impact that you as one person can have is absolutely massive.
Absolutely.
Whereas when I was at Savills, even if you were a top billing negotiator bringing in 250, 300 grand a year, for a company which turns over 2 or 3 billion, it's an absolute drop in the ocean. So I think your impact and job security in many ways at those companies is less, because if times get tough, you can be gone pretty quickly. Whereas when you're at a company where you are so important to its growth and its integrity and its success, you have more security in many ways, and more of a reward for that effort that you put in.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Sometimes people refer to you just being a number in a Savills or a CBRE, and of course that isn't true, but there's some truth in it, that lies underneath it. And you certainly, have much more of an impact at a smaller company, which, people are, I think everyone's striving for. You want to be able to make an impact on the company. No, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think your relationship with clients is different, because it's just been me for the first year of Flower Property. You are really there from the start of that customer journey to the end of that customer journey, whereas when you are at those bigger companies, it's much more often partitioned up to, if you were doing a lettings agency, you'd maybe be finding the people to rent it, but then actually the leases would be done by another team, and you'd lose that relationship with that client at some point, in the same way you actually get to see the full reward of start to finish when you're at that smaller company.
Yeah, you can really build, you being as a trusted advisor to your clients. And I built some good relationships with some key clients at Robinsons, which I sadly will miss, but I look forward to building, similar relationships here. But being able to advise your client on, a variety of things rather than just office agency is rewarding. And as I said, I learned a lot at Robinsons from a more 360 kind of service as opposed to a more specialised in my previous roles.
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about building a network here is a good segue on to talking about the jump across. So you had this 10, 11-year stint in the world of commercial at one big multinational and then a smaller agency, Robinsons. What sort of started to prompt the idea of thinking, because it's quite a big leap of faith that you've done, which is moving out of the suburbs of London from a fairly stable job at a company which had been around for decades to a new company, freshly started in a new area. What were sort of the initial thoughts behind considering taking that leap and then actually go through to the deciding, I think this is what I want to do and going for it?
Yeah, I think me and my wife had discussed about moving down to the southwest over the past couple of years, and we have always talked about doing something ourselves and being able to grow something ourselves, be our own business. And so we sort of nurtured that for a year or two, and was gradually working out, well, where is the opportunity? What is the opportunity? And timing wise as well, our oldest son, Hugo, has just turned 4. And so he will be starting school next September. So that was also a natural sort of thought around getting him into our next move so then he can settle and go to school next year. And so we talked about kind of buying complexes such as a holiday letting complex, and running something there, but that was going to be more out of the sticks, and we like suburban areas. And so obviously you yourself, I think at the time we were thinking about this sort of move, I think you were probably still at one of your previous roles at Savills or Connells. And so as you then took the leap of faith yourself to set up Flower Property, and I think you were having casual conversations with me early doors about potentially joining at some point, that was a seed that was put into my brain of another potential opportunity that might be more suited. And so I think as we had more conversations of how I could contribute to Flower Property, it became clearer and clearer that this was an opportunity that I wanted to pursue. I think at Robinsons, it's a great local company, but I personally thought that I wanted to create something or build upon something with ourselves, where we could dictate, of course, the culture, how we do things, how we hopefully in the future hire, and build the business ourselves. And Robinsons is a well-established local company for 20, 30 years. And I felt that it would be quite difficult to instill change there, and so for a variety of reasons, the opportunity to join Flower Property and start something myself, I thought would be much more rewarding, hopefully in the future, building a legacy of Flower Property. And of course, it's great to be able to, create something alongside a brother. And who knows, in the future, maybe we'll be able to drag some other siblings into the company. And that was the opportunity that I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to build a business with my brother, and see where we can take it, and look back on it in 10, 15 years time, and really felt we've achieved something. And so there's a variety of reasons for making the leap of faith, and it is a leap of faith, and it is a big change. But we've set ourselves up so that we are managing the risk of not having a stable income. For me, we've managed that process. I've been quite methodical on how it could work and how I could go to effectively starting a company. So I've been quite calculated about the move, and I've made hopefully our family stable enough so then we can go and pursue this and have free reign to really give it a go.
Nice, yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? And as you said, we're lucky in that we've got the skill set of other people in the family, so that hopefully in the long run, if they're interested in bringing their expertise to expanding the business into other areas, be that architecture or rate surveying, whatever it may be, we've got that scope. And I think that's what is nice about the name Flower Property, is it's broad. We share that name so other people can join and really be a part of that from the family. So that takes you to the leap of faith and making it, and how are you finding it now that you've made that leap? How's it going, and what's your experience of residential versus commercial? Tell us a bit more about all of that experience.
Yeah, sure. The leap of faith is going well at the minute. I think I'm still learning the ropes is the right phrase. Still trying to adjust to everything. It's great at the minute, having control of your own time, and controlling your own diary. You don't have to be somewhere at a certain time. You don't have to leave at a certain time. That flexibility is taking some getting used to. But yeah, it's going well. And residential compared to commercial, I mean, I would say that I'm not closing the door at all on commercial property. It would be silly to, given that I've worked in it for 10, 12 years or however long it is. And I'd like to think there are these sort of crossovers between residential lettings management and commercial lettings and management. And so at the moment, I think, I'm focusing on residential lettings because I need to learn about it. I need to understand it more so than compared to commercial, because I've been doing it for such a long time. But it has its similarities, of course it does. It's renting real estate, so it has its similarities, but of course it certainly has its differences. And we can talk about those if you want to.
Yeah, definitely can get into that, and we'll go across to talking about the red tape, of which I imagine there's a lot more in many ways in residential lettings, and there's a lot of legislation change there with the Renters' Right Bill anyway, which is starting to come into effect from May of next year. So we'll go on to that. But what would be great as well is if you could talk about, from your perspective at least, on that letting side. You can bring commercial into it as well if you like, but what your ambition is with the letting side of the Flower Property business. What would you like to see happen? Where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, sure. Get bigger, obviously, is the key. Obviously, we'd like to build up a strong portfolio of residential properties, both with clients that would like us or myself to look after them on a managed basis. But of course, that's not for everyone, and they like a let only basis. So the goal really is to build that portfolio up for obvious business purposes. And we'd just, we'd love to build Flower Property as a whole, and of course the letting side, into a reputable local Bath firm that everyday people, owner occupiers, but also clearly investors can turn to. And whilst we want to build a portfolio, I think it's imperative and vital that it's not built up at any cost. I want to ensure that each client is getting the same level of service, and I think that's what we will and do and want to instill to our clients, is that we give them the best level of service. So that is the goal, really, to build a strong portfolio, but keeping our level of service and integrity at Flower Property throughout that portfolio.
Yeah, it is a real challenge. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on how you manage that, because the advantage we have at the moment is that we are small scale. It's the two of us. As we've said, we manage every client, landlord, tenant, buyer's journey from start to finish. But when you scale, that becomes harder. And that's what we have over those bigger companies at the moment, is that we can really give that personalised level of service. So it'd be interesting to hear how you think you manage that as we grow. But then also, from your perspective, what do you see as the key things to be able to grow it? What do you think you will be able to do to grow the letting side of the business, to win landlords? What have you got planned on that front? Because I know you've got a few ideas with networking events, etc.
So what have I got planned to try and grow the business?
To do what you aim to do, which is grow it.
Well, I think what's great about the flexibility at the minute is like you go back to, is building that network. Getting out into the local community, building that network with all different types of people, of professions, which is really, really exciting, and I'm really enjoying it. And constantly got events that we're going to at the minute, and I'm going to, and I think that's one of the key things, or one of the vital things, in order to grow a business, because our name is not well known at the minute, and I think we could admit that. And the way to build that kind of brand awareness is to be out there as much as possible, shouting from the rooftops that we're here. But I think the first question you put is, how do you keep that, the challenges of growing a portfolio or a business and maintaining those USPs, if you want to call them. And I guess every business has that challenge. And I hope we do have that challenge. And I think I guess the hiring process, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to hire some people. We will have to try and attract the best talent around there, and make Flower Property an attractive business proposition for employees to want to come to, and instilling that culture and building a culture that we've set and we enjoy. I think is the most important thing is ensuring that your employees are happy and feel in an environment that they can raise matters, they feel valued, are remunerated appropriately, and you get what you give what you get back. You get what you give, effectively. So I think that's, every business has that challenge of growing and keeping that level of service and that level of integrity. So I think hopefully we'll have those challenges, and we will keep our USPs.
Yeah, hopefully. Obviously, that's what we both strive for, of course. And I think, as you said, hiring the right people is fundamental. And having spoken to other small business owners, or even people who work for larger businesses, that can make or break you getting the right staff. And I think, we'll talk about it when that comes up in the future, once we scale to that point. But being able to offer a package and a remuneration which is better than the competition here gives you the best chance of securing the best talent, right? Which gives you the best chance of offering that USP, that extra quality care and customer service, and get better results financially as well from having those best in class from around the area. But we will get to that point, and I'm sure we'll work it out one way or another.
Yeah.
It's just another
We'll make
stepping stone.
mistakes and we'll get things wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
It's a costly mistake to get
Yeah.
wrong, so hopefully we won't. But we will learn learn from everything and grow. That's the exciting thing about building a business is you are constantly facing new challenges, which can be uncomfortable, but then very rewarding when you work out a solution on how to navigate it and overcome it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting. We'll see how it goes and how it grows. What would be great as well, just towards the end of this episode, is we've spoken a lot about you, but now you're in residential lettings, you're heading up the lettings team here at Flower Property. There have been a lot of changes to legislation. The Renters' Rights Bill has now passed royal assent, so it is passed as law.
Yeah.
Tell us more about how that is going to impact landlords, and maybe it's worth also giving a few recommendations to landlords on how they should prepare to make sure they navigate these changes in the most successful way possible.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously it's a huge shake-up in the industry in the renters, private renters section. So it comes in, the first phase comes into force on the 1st of May. And I think there's not a lot of scaremongering going on, but I think, this legislation is to make things fairer for tenants and for landlords, and a lot of landlords won't see it like that. And to a degree, I do sort of agree with them, but it is to try and prevent the bad tenants and the bad landlords. It really is to cover the minorities of them. And I think, as long as you are a compliant landlord and you are a reasonable landlord, that you don't need to be too concerned. I think there are a lot of changes, but I think it's important that you have the information. I would anticipate there's a lot of amateur or novice landlords that are unaware of these changes. So what I would recommend, and what we're trying to do, is get the information out there about these changes and what that means. So I would speak to your managing agents, or I'd speak to some professionals about these changes and what that means. And of course, please speak to us if you're worried about these changes and what you should be doing. But I think what is important is that your agents, or you, if you're doing it directly, is that you are strict is the right word on your vetting process of choosing tenants. I think it is really important to get your due diligence done correctly and your referencing process done correctly on tenants, because of course there is always an element of risk when you're renting out your properties to who you are renting them to. You don't know these people. You can meet them, you can get all the information, but at the end of the day there is an element of risk. So I think it's to try and get as comfortable as possible before you rent out your property. And so I think what we plan to do in the new year is to run some landlord events. In the new year we've got 5 months until the 1st of May. We plan to run a couple of landlord events in the local community in Bath here, where we can hopefully answer concerns and questions that landlords have, and hopefully give them some sound advice of what they need to do. But I think overall there's going to be some more admin for landlords, certainly. But I think it goes back to as long as you are a reasonable, competent landlord, and you carry out your processes well, that can mitigate the risk as much as possible, which you're never going to mitigate it down to zero. But that would be my advice, is to get prepared, speak to your advisors, speak to us, come to our landlord events that we'll be doing to raise your concerns, and hopefully we can allay those fears.
So yes, I think you've summarised it really well with what you need to look out for with the Renters' Rights Bill. I'd probably say that's firstly making sure you choose the right agent, be that a managing agent or lettings agent, so that you navigate all of the legislation, you don't miss any of the red tape that might get you in trouble or fined. So choosing that
Yeah.
agent is crucial. It doesn't have to be Flower Property,
Yeah.
it's great if it is, but choose the
Could
right
be.
one. Choose someone who will do the job well. Number two, it's very, very important to choose the right tenants, because Section 21 notices are gone. It will be more difficult to evict tenants if they aren't paying rent or doing other things in the property they shouldn't. But there is also something else which is important, which I think is worth you speaking about, which is how do you protect yourself and insure yourself if things do go wrong? Because sometimes they can do.
Yeah, certainly. I think, prior to any tenancy or as a tenancy is about to start, you really should consider getting landlord's insurance. I've actually got a couple of rentals myself where I do have landlord's insurance. And it just covers you in that event that a tenant does not pay you rent. And so, you can rely on this rent insurance that you've got which will immediately start paying the rent that you are not getting from your tenants. And if you have to consider taking legal action, they will cover your legal costs in pursuing them. And that process will take some time. It will take several months if you need to go down a Section 8 process in order to evict them because they are not paying rent. They will pay your rent during that time, and they will cover your legal costs. So I think this is nothing new. Landlord's rent insurance or landlord's insurance. You could have done it prior to this, but I think given the Renters' Rights Act that's coming in, it's even more important to consider it. And it's not overly expensive. It's probably in the region of specifics are going to be different for each property, but it's probably in the region of about £250 a year. So it could save you a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of hassle. Just to give you that peace of mind if it does happen where your tenant doesn't pay you rent, and it is now an extra month until you can pursue getting possession back for non-payment of rent. It was 2 months and now it's 3 months. And so if you're not getting paid for 3 months, it's only at that point that can you start proceedings to get possession back. So much better to have that cover in that place of the 3 months they're not paying you, and then the process it's going to take for you to hopefully get back possession.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's better to insure yourself. It's, I suppose, a little bit frustrating that you have to pay a few extra £100 a year because there are a lot of costs associated with being a landlord. But it's like any insurance product. You hope that you never have to use it.
Yeah.
But when you do need to use it, you're very, very thankful that you've got it there to use and make use of. So, yeah.
And I think to add and to give Flower Property a plug here is that if with our management fee, if you were to let us look after the property and manage it, our fee actually includes landlord's insurance within that management fee. So it's not something you have to go and find out and find a broker, etc., and find the policy that you need. We will handle that on your behalf. So if we manage your property on your behalf, you will automatically have landlord's insurance.
That's a really good point, actually. I think, we've done a good chunk of talking about the Renters' Rights Bill, but about yourself, lettings, and the package that you offer here. It'd be good to talk more about that, because I know, having worked at other agencies, that there are a lot of hidden costs when employing a letting agent. It might seem like it's quite an affordable fee using their services, but then they're charging for drafting the tenancy agreement, references, pre-tenancy clean, inventory and check-in, and suddenly you've got an extra £500, £600, £700 on top of what seemed like quite an attractive fee. But we like to do that a little bit differently here at Flower Property. Tell us more about kind of how we package that up for our landlords.
So we offer different types of service within our lettings department. So we can just find a tenant for you as a let-only basis. We can do a rent collection only service where we collect the rent on your behalf, but you still would manage the property. Or we can manage the whole process for you, the whole tenancy for you. So it's completely hands off. And as you've said, a lot of agencies that offer fully managed services or tenant only find services, there'll be hidden costs, and it will add up as you've alluded to. But with our service on any of those tiered services that I've just mentioned, it automatically includes all of those hidden costs. So tenant referencing, registering of a deposit, tenancy creation and sign up, and then landlord's rent insurance, and then check-in, check-out inventory. And we also do a pre-tenancy clean, which is really important to have done at the start of the tenancy, because if you're presenting your property professionally cleaned, then your tenants will subconsciously feel like they want to look after this place slightly better, or better than if it was a bit untidy to begin with. So we include that all within our fee, and it may on the surface appear a little bit more expensive, but in the reality it is very competitive against the other agents, which probably entice you into what appears to be a more competitive fee. But once you add all of those items that I've just mentioned as separate costs, it works out to be relatively the same price. And I think we've just got that. It gives you that transparency. Whereas, you can often find that you've asked for a let only fee, but then you get the invoice at the end and you've got these itemized costs which you weren't really aware of, or after you've signed a terms of business with this company, they say, "Oh, do you want to have this, and do you want to have that?" And these are things you really do need, so you can't really say no.
Yeah, I think it's so much better to be transparent. It makes the process more clear. It's much easier for you as a landlord then to work out, well, these are exactly what my returns are, because I know that I have this cost at the start of the tenancy, this cost month by month for the managing agent, as opposed to thinking you're getting a certain return, and then actually when you have these hidden costs come up, all of a sudden you're a bit shortchanged, and maybe the investment doesn't make as much sense as it did before. Those hidden costs come up. And the other point you've mentioned, which I think is so crucial for any landlord to be aware of, is starting off the tenancy on a good footing. 95% of the time means that the whole tenancy will run smoothly. If you start the tenancy off on a poor footing, and the property's presented in poor condition, or it's not clean, the chances are the tenants will search for things to complain about, and it will just continue to spiral and get worse and worse. So starting the tenancy off is crucial, and presenting a really good property. In my experience, the properties which have problems are the properties which are in bad condition. They get worse quality tenants, more things go wrong, and things are just a lot more complicated. If you can have a really presentable, clean and tidy property with everything in a good condition, you will get the best tenants and you will have the smoothest tenancies. So that is crucial to do, whoever you use. Just make sure your property's in good nick. It makes a huge difference.
It does make a huge difference. And I think also what is important also to consider, as you're mentioning at the start of the tenancy, and if you're managing it yourself or you have an agent to do it, is to keep that communication with your tenants at all time, and not to be silent. I suppose particularly if you're managing the property on your own, is to try, and it's going to be so important with these changes to come in, is to maintain that good relationship with your tenants, so that if there are problems, you've got that trust between you, and problems which might be quite big may seem a little bit smaller because you've got that strong relationship going with your tenants. I think there's traditionally a bit of a loggerheads between the relationship between landlords and tenants, and I think so important to try and maintain a good working relationship, because it is a working relationship between tenant and landlord, and that will go a long way to having a successful and hopefully as stress-free possible tenancy.
Very much so. And then it's the same, as you said, maintaining that relationship is crucial. And when things do go wrong, as sometimes they do, properties are unpredictable. A lot of them here are 300 or 400 years old, so things are going to go wrong. But it's then managing that process while dealing with those issues quickly, because that just keeps the relationship strong. That's what you want to do. It's just much better to solve something, get something dealt with as fast as possible, which is what we like to do, as opposed to really dragging your heels and dealing with issues slowly. It is just crucial. So that's been a good sort of summary, I think, of your journey into property, and then across to Flower Property. To finish it off, what I think would be really nice to ask is, where would you like to see yourself with Flower Property in 1 year's time, 5 years' time, and 10 years' time?
1, 5 and 10.
1, 5 and 10, yeah.
Crikey. In 1 year's time, I'd like to think in 1 year's time, we've got our own premises. And that'd be, a sort of a high street location where we're much more visible. So I think in 1 year's time, I'd like to think we've began building our book of properties and our book of clients and relationships with our own shop front or our own home, if you want to call it. And then in 5 years' time, I think maintaining that premises, but I'd like to think we've employed 2 or 3 people, support staff, but also some other sort of fee earners as well. And then in 10 years' time, I certainly like us to potentially have a multi-office or multi-premises agency with a growing, thriving culture and employees on our roster. But I think overall just becoming, throughout the next 10 years, become an ingrained business of the community, and having our values very much instilled, and throughout the community, and everyone knows who Flower Property is and what they stand for.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I agree. I just spent the week down in Somerset doing a bit of a staycation and thought this would be great to have an office somewhere down into deep Somerset around, Street, Glastonbury, Wells Way. You've got so many amazing villages. It'd just be a lovely place to live and work in the future, but love being in the city for now. Luke, thanks very much.
Thanks,
it was
Jack.
really good to chat to you, and best of luck with everything at Flower Property.
Thanks very much.